Welcome back. I'm Andrea McGarren with KHTY TV and News. This is Global Perspectives. Europe, the EU, and the European Common Market are often confused, even by experts. Many officials and journalists lump everything and everyone from Europe together, overlooking important distinctions. The European Union, created in the 1990s, is not a single country or superstate like the United States or Canada, but a group of sovereign nations working together under shared rules. Yet mistakes and misconceptions persist in Canada, where colonial history and European identity are often oversimplified. Why is this confusion still so common? Is it just a lack of understanding, or is it something deeper at play? But before we get started, please subscribe and click the like bell. Your support is appreciated. Keep watching and listening on RSS and YouTube for more episodes analyzing the world and current events. Okay, let's continue with episode 3, Europe, the EU, and the European Common Market. Differences that confuse. Many Canadians watch Northern Perspectives on YouTube for its fair and well-presented discussions. However, a recent episode fell short when the expert argued that Canada shouldn't try to be like Europe, without clarifying whether she meant the continent, its islands, individual nations, the EU, or the European Common Market. I've seen and heard similar things before. An Edmonton woman was pushing her child in a stroller through a local shopping mall. She was confronted by a middle-aged Indigenous man who heard her speaking with an English accent. He shouted, "We don't need your sort here. Go back to Europe." Feeling overwhelmed as her child cried, the woman didn't respond to the man's outburst. What troubled her most was that in Canada, even Indigenous people use broad labels for all white individuals, shaping a national narrative about colonialism. As a legal immigrant since childhood, she felt betrayed by this attitude. She found it odd that Canada welcomes newcomers, yet treats many as if they are choosing to colonize, when that is not the case. Many Canadians, from schools to governments, misuse or misunderstand these terms. This confusion leads to stereotypes and backlash against newcomers, fueled by both racism and a lack of education. Ultimately, it highlights Canada's complex history and its ongoing challenges with identity and inclusion. Europe is a continent made up of many countries, including its islands and northern Scandinavia. The European Union is a group of nations that agree to follow shared rules set by the EU Parliament and its courts, although these bodies aren't directly elected by citizens. Unlike provinces or states, each EU country remains independent and sovereign. The EU was formed to make trade and travel easier. Still, it faces ongoing challenges like immigration policies, economic instability, the euro, and border security. As the EU's influence over the UK law, culture, and immigration grew in the late 1990s, calls to leave became stronger. Many supported Brexit and welcomed its arrival. Prior to the vote concerning the UK entering the EU, I had been following its development closely, writing for a UK business magazine. The information I received directly from The Hague in Brussels, sometimes in French, revealed deep flaws in the EU's structure. Even then, it was clear that the EU would struggle to maintain unity. Despite warnings of a migrant crisis from ISIS itself, the EU has taken little effective action. Now, countries like Sweden, Germany, and the UK have reached their limits. Many European nations are pushing back against illegal migration and the challenges posed by these illegal economic migrants. Most Europeans are frustrated that these criminals who bypass legal channels and force their way into countries are just being allowed to do what they want. However, the European Court of Human Rights and many leaders often overlook these actions, choosing instead to accommodate migrants while their own citizens feel neglected. Protests and unrests have erupted, and while economies have struggled, They often rebounded. Yet, European cultures now face real threats. With attacks happening on a regular basis all over Europe, things have got to change. Recent attacks in Switzerland have underscored the reasons for Brexit and why the European Union, not Europe itself, appears headed for collapse. At this point, it's not a matter of if, but when the EU will fail. Despite Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney's opposition to Brexit, the UK is recovering. While Canadian media often labels the UK, Germany, and other European nations as failed states, Canada should reflect on its own challenges first. European countries have faced and overcome hardship for centuries, thousands of years, in fact, and they are resilient. There's growing evidence that the EU itself is faltering, but its member states remain committed to protecting their own interests, security, and sovereignty. Canada's ongoing struggles with its identity and history are evident, especially compared to the long-established nations of Europe and the UK. So what separates the EU, Europe, the European Common Market, the US and Canada? Here's a quick breakdown. Europe is a continent of 44 countries and several dependencies, each with its own government, currency, and culture. It's not a single geopolitical unit. The European Union, or EU, is a separate political and economic alliance of 27 member nations, established in the 1990s. While the EU introduced the euro, many member countries keep their own currencies. EU nations remain distinct and independent. Brexit was the UK's decision to leave the EU. The European Common Market was a partnership of about 12 nations focused on economic cooperation and preventing war after World War II. It was stable until the EU replaced it in 1993. Raising serious questions about the cost of this transition. Compared to that, the United States is a federal republic formed in 1776 with 50 states, several territories, and one currency, the US dollar. Canada, by contrast, is a constitutional monarchy with King Charles III as head of state and Prime Minister Mark Carney as its political leader. While it has a federal parliament like the US, Canada's multicultural experiment has led to most calling it a soft dictatorship. Recent tensions have led provinces like Alberta, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, Quebec, and Manitoba to consider independence. Notably, the provinces joined confederations at different times, Quebec and Ontario first, Newfoundland and Labrador last. Despite strong UK ties, Canada's culture, economy, languages, and traditions remain unique. Remember, twisting facts isn't true journalism. Are you listening, Canadian mainstream media? What are your thoughts? Share in the comments below. You've been listening to Europe, the EU, and the European Common Market. Differences that confuse. Episode 3 of Global Perspectives. This is Andrea McGarren. Join us next time with Episode 4, AI Apocalypse, or Y2K Redux, separating fear from facts.